Hi, my name is Lindsay Francis, and I'm here to present to you on implicit bias. Let's talk. As educators, it is in our nature to believe that all students have inherent worth and should be treated with equity. Each child that enters our classroom is unique and special and deserving of a quality education. Regardless of a child's race, gender, socioeconomic status, or other background factors, we believe that every child has the right to learn. Ask any educator, and I bet they would tell you that they would do everything possible to meet the varying needs of the children in their classroom. However, today I would like to bring awareness to something that undoubtedly holds us and our students back, something no one likes to talk about. It is called implicit bias. Think about the first time your students step into your classroom. Your teacher brain automatically starts trying to figure out each child. You begin to form immediate judgments based off of their clothing, personal hygiene, the belongings they bring to open house or lack thereof, the way the parents interact with you, and a variety of other factors. Your brain is working in overdrive trying to make sense of the situation. Making these assessments, or judgments as we may like to call them, is also known as stereotyping. Stereotyping can lead to the dangerous phenomenon known as implicit bias. The beliefs we form about our students in the first few days or even minutes of meeting and interacting with them can pave the way for how we view and treat each student for the entirety of their time in our classroom. Implicit bias, by definition, is any unconscious association, belief, or attitude we hold towards any person or social group. Implicit bias is not the same as racism or any other conscious discrimination, but the concepts are related. Although we may actively speak out against bigotry and negative attitudes towards marginalized groups, implicit biases are embedded in everyone. Implicit bias can be related to race, gender, education, disability, socioeconomic status, or a multitude of other things. Typically, most people favor whichever group they are a part of or the culturally valued group. In 1995, Mazarin Banaje and Tony Greenwald coined the term implicit bias, and in 1998 they created the implicit association test to support their influential hypothesis, proposing that social behavior is largely influenced by unconscious associations and judgments. Implicit biases are something that we are typically unaware of until the concept is intentionally brought to our attention, which is my purpose for addressing you today. Becoming aware of and discussing our own implicit biases can be very uncomfortable, but the only way to combat these biases and work to reverse them is by creating a safe, trusting environment that promotes honest, open discussion and shows true, dedicated efforts to personal improvement. So, where does implicit bias come from? Why do we have it? According to Valerie Alexander, making quick judgments or analyses of people and situation is in our nature. It stems from a long existing need for survival. It's how ancient people kept from being eaten by saber-toothed tigers or killed by foreign tribe members. Our brains seek patterns and attempt to make shortcuts to simplify and understand the world. Our brains make associations based on things we are exposed to, which means we are all influenced by experiences, cultural conditioning, media portrayals, and our upbringing. When it comes to social science, there's ample evidence that when we encounter something fundamentally different from what we expect, it elicits a stronger activation in the amygdala than encountering something or someone we perceive as the norm. So our stress response is naturally higher, which ties directly to our implicit biases or instinctual thoughts or reactions. These thoughts or reactions may be very subtle, hence why they are also referred to as unconscious biases, but they are still present nonetheless. Harboring these implicit biases puts us at risk for all perpetuating inequality. Oftentimes, our implicit biases affect our discipline procedures and cause us to make judgments on the performance abilities of our students. Research from Mary Ellen Flannery and Melissa Garcia, along with a multitude of other sources, has found that an educator's belief in a student's ability to succeed does have an effect on how well they do in school. Therefore, the implicit biases we harbor could potentially be holding our students back or negatively impacting their sense of self. Implicit biases can lead to stereotype threat, which means our students are building beliefs about themselves based on how we view them. So at this point, you may be thinking one of two things. One, you're not talking about me. I treat every child fairly and I see them for all they are. Or two, wow, so what can I do to fix this? What's the next step? For those of you who are thinking that you do not harbor any implicit biases, I challenge you to take an IAT. I don't want to explain too much about it initially because I do think that familiarity with the test can skew the results. There are even some resources that speculate the test is slightly unreliable, but from my personal experience, my first time taking an IAT did truly uncover an implicit bias I was unaware of. It was an eye-opening experience, and it is my hope that your own results will help you see things from another perspective. For those wondering what's next, what do we do? I think it is time for us to consider the words of Yasmin Abdel Majid. Now that we've acknowledged the existence of implicit bias, let's identify the personal biases we harbor and design systems to mitigate against them. According to Sarah Fierman, it is possible to counteract implicit biases and essentially change our responses to certain groups and situations. There's not a quick or easy fix, but with time, dedication, and purposeful intentions, we can work together to counteract the biases we harbor. One thing we can do is deliberately consume messages to offset the negative biases we possess. Let's design ways to get to know our students even better through surveys, interviews, lunch bunches, anything that will help us understand them and build empathy. We must also develop systems to reduce biased decisions. This could entail using popsicle sticks with names on them or a random name generator to call on students during class discussions, creating a discipline flow chart and using it with fidelity to ensure that misbehavior is dealt with consistently, engaging in blind grading or collaborative grading practices. So we allot points solely based on the product presented, not our personal views of each student. And most importantly, let's hold each other accountable. Don't be afraid to ask tough questions. If you sense the presence of implicit bias in a colleague, ask them about it. And in turn, do not be offended by someone trying to hold you accountable. So, as mentioned in the beginning, addressing implicit bias is tough. It takes a lot of trust and a willingness to be uncomfortable for a little while. But don't we owe it to our students to become the best versions of ourselves for them? If we truly believe that all students are unique, special, and entitled to a quality education where people believe in them and want the best for their future, then there is no question about whether or not we should continue having discussions about implicit bias. Moving forward, let's talk. It's okay to be honest. It's okay to be uncomfortable. Let's do it without judgment. Let's do it with the purpose of making ourselves, our staff, and our school as a whole a better place for all of our kids. Thanks for listening.